Canines require ample room for running and engaging in playful activities. This is precisely why they thrive most when their owners reside on farms or properties equipped with spacious backyards. One particular Minnesota-based German Shepherd enjoyed such an existence alongside a caring family. However, his journey wasn't always this idyllic. Prior to being rescued, his initial experiences were marked by the challenges of confinement within a box. Martha Fable, residing near Duluth in a tranquil small town, led a peaceful life alongside her husband Bill. Their days centered around the care of their animals, including horses, chickens, goats, and a handful of dogs. Remarkably, some friends had entrusted them with the guardianship of their own animals, transforming their property into a cherished animal sanctuary. Martha's background involved employment at an animal shelter, a commitment that had driven much of her life's purpose towards aiding creatures in need. Bill, a veterinarian for over 3 decades, had crossed paths with Martha almost 40 years prior when he volunteered as a student at the shelter she worked at. Over time, their devotion to animals had only intensified, despite the evolving circumstances. Their understanding of the profound bond with animals had grown, driving them towards a perilous mission fueled by love, a mission that would endanger everything they held dear. A mere 3 blocks away stood Piccadilly Farm, under the stewardship of elderly Damien. The Piccadilly family had vacated the premises, compelled to sell and leave town. Damien had acquired the property at a bargain, moving there just a year prior. Oddly, he exhibited little curiosity about acquainting himself with his neighbors, a stark contrast in a closely knit community where everyone was familiar with one another. In this town with just a couple of stores, mingling with neighbors seemed inevitable. However, almost no one had any interaction with Damien, aside from the auction where he acquired his property. His behavior was enshrouded in a significant undisclosed matter. The narrative took root on an ordinary afternoon when Martha caught wind, courtesy of a local, about a potential distress call from an animal on Damien's land. A friend of Martha relayed that her husband, who had ventured to Damien's house for repairs, believed he heard an animal's distressed cries echoing across the yard. The sound ceased when he began searching, leaving him uncertain. Unease surrounded Damien, fueling mistrust. Martha felt an internal compulsion to act, even if the likelihood of trouble was slight. Instincts surged, impelling her to respond. Upon returning home, she discussed the matter with Bill, ultimately deciding to embark on an investigative mission the following day. They waited until the afternoon before driving over to the property. First, they tried knocking on Damien's door, but nobody responded. Then they tried calling his landline because their friends had given his number to Martha. Still, there was no response. Feeling brave, the couple decided to make their way to the backyard and have a look for themselves. They opened an old rusty gate that led into a cluttered yard. There were old car parts, rusty furniture pieces, and overgrown shrubbery everywhere. It was hard to tell what was junk and what was meant to be there. The old house had been neglected too, with pieces of wood frames from doors and broken bricks piling up. As Martha and Bill crept through the long grass, they looked out for any sign of movement. Bill softly whistled, but there was no response. They poked around for a few minutes before deciding to head back to the car. But just as they reached the gate, they heard a sound. Just a few seconds later, and they wouldn't have been able to hear. Their lives would have been changed forever. "What was that?" Bill asked his wife. They both stopped in their tracks to listen. It was too late now. They had to investigate. There was again a high-pitched whimper, but it sounded muffled. It could have been an animal. But where was it? It seemed to be coming from the opposite direction of the house. Martha and Bill resumed their search. Eventually, they found a large wooden box concealed by some shrubs. As the cry came again, they were certain it was coming from inside. By this point, the couple was scared. They were approaching their 60s and not as strong as they used to be. What if there was something dangerous inside? There was a padlock on the top of the box, but Bill pulled out his pocket knife and started cutting through the wood instead. After a couple of minutes, they had the top plank free, and it was loose enough to lift off. They both held their breath as they removed the plank, but they weren't ready for what they were about to uncover. As the sunlight flooded into the box, a scruffy German shepherd emerged from the shadows. The dog was underfed, gray, and squinting from the strength of the sun. Martha and Bill sprang into action as soon as they recognized how much trouble the dog was in. They had brought water and food with them just in case. Bill quickly poured some water into a lid and placed it inside the box on the opposite side of the dog. The dog didn't move at first. He looked too scared to do anything. He was cautious and shivering. Slowly, he tepidly crawled toward the lid and took a few licks of water, his eyes fixed on Bill and Martha. The two animal lovers then dropped some treats into the box. After that, they unpacked a blanket they had stashed away in a backpack, wrapped the dog up, and got him to the car as fast as possible. They headed to the house. Bill had everything he needed there. But what happened next shocked everyone. The dog was so sick that Bill had to give him a few doses of medicine before conducting a proper inspection. It was clear that he hadn't been washed in weeks and was surviving on very little food. In fact, it was a mystery how he was alive at all. Bill had never seen a dog in worse condition. The dog's eyes were barely open, and his paws were badly injured. The next few hours were tense. Bill and Martha were worried sick as they prayed for the dog to pull through. They needed a miracle if he was going to recover. What came next was one of the most amazing things they had ever seen. After some much-needed food and drink, the dog finally started to blink his eyes as he saw Bill and Martha standing above him. He panted, almost in a smile. He had found his new parents. They decided to name him Vulcan. Over the next few weeks, while Bill was at work, Martha barely left Vulcan's side. She fed him, bathed him, and helped him learn how to walk again. It took time, but slowly Vulcan began to walk again. It started with crawling, and he couldn't put all of his weight on his back legs. That's when Martha conceived the notion of utilizing a tailor-made stroller. Once she secured his hind legs into place, Vulcan found mobility by propelling himself with his front legs. Initially cautious, he gradually fortified the muscles in his legs. Soon he was traversing the house and garden at remarkable speeds. Vulcan reveled in frolicking with the other animals. The goats, chickens, and horses swiftly recognized Vulcan. The dog with wheels. When relaxation or sleep beckoned, Martha would release him from the wheelchair and gently carry him to bed. Naturally, Bill and Martha reported Damien to law enforcement and animal welfare organizations. In due course, Damien found himself ostracized from the community. His presence was unwanted, forcing him to depart. For Vulcan, however, he transformed into the town's beloved canine. Initially wary, Vulcan eventually comprehended that the townsfolk were allies, erasing any concerns. Among all the creatures Bill and Martha had rescued, Vulcan held a special place. They risked their lives to salvage Vulcan, a commitment they would readily undertake again. How do you feel about this remarkable tale? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the content, a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. Don't hesitate to share and subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you for your support.